Welcome to Thrive Deeper, an ongoing conversation with Dr. Matthew Jacoby, author of the Thrive Bible Reading Guides, teaching pastor, and leader of the Psalmist band Sons of Korah. Join us as we go deeper into the Bible, discussing the passages as we read them together with Thrive. Now here's your host, DJ Payne.
G'day and welcome to episode 46 of Thrive Deeper. It's back. DJ Payne here, your humble host, and you're going to join Matthew Jacoby and myself having a conversation around the book of Proverbs. We're hovering around chapter 23, chapter 24, and we're bringing some concepts out. We've been doing it over the last few weeks, and today is one of the topics that I am so passionate about. It's the topic of discipline. Oof. A multifaceted subject for us to go down, and I think you're going to enjoy it. But we start off this week's episode with a weird little conversation about music. All right, so enjoy that after the break here at Thrive Deeper. All right, put you on the spot. What have you been listening to music-wise?
That does put me on the spot. I have been going through, as you know, one of my favourite labels is the ECM label, and I know, I find it fascinating because they just have such a variety of different music, and I've been just going through, like on Apple Music, from one to another, and just going through it all now. Albums. You've got the whole library. like going through albums and just the most interesting stuff. So. It's just, and the thing with Apple Music, like you listen to an album, then you go down, it recommends a whole lot of others. You think, oh, that looks good, so I go down and I'll sort of survey that. So
now, how would you describe to the ordinary Joe ECM, the record label?
Well, it's mainly like jazz world and classical music.
Yes.
And it's kind of high end
instrumental.
No, there is some vocal stuff, but it's not. There is some vocal stuff, but it's mainly instrumental. Yeah. It's kind of on the experimental sort of edge. I mean, it's just interesting. It's just it's as I said, it's very high end. Like a lot of the best musicians in their various instruments, record with this label, and it's just an interesting way of discovering musicians that play in lots of different things. But I just love the process of discovering and the idea. I mean, I've always got lots of ideas from it, and I love it.
It's for the ordinary Joe out there that likes to listen to pop radio. Yeah, it's artsy fartsy music.
Yeah, artsy fartsy. Speaking of artsy fartsy, actually, a band have you ever heard of Cinematic Orchestra?
Yeah.
I've been getting into those guys. Actually, Mike, the new guitarist in Sons of Korah, he put me on to them, and so I've been getting into their stuff a bit. And
awesome.
And
also he's a real jazz.
Yeah.
He's like technically
he's
phenomenal.
Up there. Yeah, that's right. So so that's been good. And I mean, another album that he recommended that I hadn't got much into, but I'm getting back into, is Bon Iver's new album. Anyway,
cool, awesome.
So there you go. That's you put me on the spot.
No,
That's
I love it. I'm always thinking of another question to put you on the spot, and I'm not answering that question because we would be here all day. I'm only going to mention Kings Kaleidoscope, ZEAL, the new album by Kings Kaleidoscope. You
were playing a bit to me just before, and it's really creative stuff. I loved it.
Very, very creative.
I've downloaded the album. I'm going to have a listen. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, Matt, this is episode 46. We are still in Proverbs. We're hovering around chapter 23, chapter 24. And before we get into looking at this week's topic, I just wanted to give a shout out to Anna K, who's written to us, and she said, I just wanted to say thanks so much, guys, for your last podcast on decisions. It was so good and answered a lot of questions for me. It was really helpful. Thanks, Anna.
Oh, that's nice.
We love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, positive feedback.
That's actually, it's really nice to have that. Obviously, we're sitting in a studio. We don't, we're not interfacing directly with an audience. So it really is great to hear that. that kind of feedback. So thank you, and I appreciate that.
And the way that Anna did that, you can do that too. You can do that over at the website thrivetoday.net.au is the way that Anna got a hold of us, and all those messages come directly to us. So please, if you've got feedback, now it doesn't have to be all nice and positive. We do enjoy that. If you've got any questions or you're not happy with Matt's selection of music, you can let him know.
or if you disagree with anything that we've said, like, let us know. I mean, we're learning too, so
exactly.
we're up for all kinds of feedback.
Awesome. Okay, now, as we look into Proverbs, we've been going through, making decisions, dealing with conflict with people, all the different, aspects that Proverbs talks about. What is this week's topic?
Well, I thought we would look at the topic of discipline, which is both explicit in some senses in the Proverbs.
Yes.
There's a lot about disciplining children in the Proverbs. I mean,
I love it.
That's a big topic. But actually, there is a context for that, and that is, and this is, I mean, one of the topics that we discussed is work and diligence, and it's kind of a topic that lies behind that, and that is this topic of self-discipline. The topic of self-discipline comes out, for example, in Proverbs like Proverbs 18:9, which says, "One who is slack in his work is brother to one who destroys." I find that a really compelling idea, because the idea is that if we neglect to do what we should do, then things go to chaos.
I reckon that's slowly becoming your life verse at the moment. I've heard you reference that verse so many times in so many different applications.
Well, actually, it was one of the other pastors at church, Jeff, who brought that to my attention. He actually spoke based on that verse, and it really hit me actually. And I recognised that applied to so many areas of my life, but I also recognised that to deal with those areas of my life, it required discipline, an element of being disciplined.
It's the biggest. Look, me personally, and I love it. I love it that you're bringing that back, and that this is a topic, because this is the most convicting topic to me personally. And I think, look, everyone's different, but for me personally, this is, the couple of areas that I really struggle with in life. It comes down to self-discipline. It really comes down to that.
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting. I've had lots of feedback from people who have said, that's it. I mean, it's all often, I think particularly as Christians, we can think it's all about having some, big experience is going to solve all my problems. Actually, in a lot of cases, it's about walking in what we do know. And being disciplined about that. And I know that's not very sort of glorious and spiritual, and
But Mono, I've got to correct you on that. That is glorious and spiritual. It doesn't. It doesn't. Like, we have this idea in the church a lot of times that which is glorious and spiritual is lofty and an experience that makes us float up to heaven, and away we go. Yeah. But really, I think the holiest things that we could do in life is the small things.
Yeah, and I think that's what I mean by, glorious in that it's not, discipline is about being constant with small things. Yes. It's constant and persevering, and we keep doing good things because they're good things. That's the essence of discipline, actually, is persevering in doing good things constantly and regularly because they're good things, whether or not you feel like it. Yeah. And that's the key. And I have been, can I just say, I've been massively impacted by thinking about this topic, actually. Yeah. Ever since this, and I think probably of all the Proverbs, and you rightly say that verse has been a bit of a catch cry for me lately, because it has had a big impact on me. And this is, let me try to go in, if I can mine this idea for a moment, because actually, as I started to think about this, I thought, gee, there's a lot of depth to this idea, and it goes right back actually to Genesis chapter 1, and this idea of the sort of the process of that chapter, which is essentially God giving form and order to that which had none. It says in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and it says, the earth was formless and empty, and the Spirit of God hovered over the over the
Yes.
waters, you know.
Yeah.
And the idea of the waters there had this association with chaos in the ancient world, watery chaos.
Yeah.
And that's kind of connected with this idea of something being formless and void. And what happens actually through Genesis chapter 1 essentially is that God gives order to what is without order. And so there's acts of naming and separating and distinguishing this from that and everything according to its kind. And even that 7-day period is to set up a rhythm, a constant rhythm of life that that was to characterize God's people. And this is all about order. And the idea there is, and of course, then on the 6th day, God empowers mankind to rule the earth and subdue it.
Yeah.
And the idea of subduing means bringing order to bear on that where there is no order.
Yeah.
So, and that is essentially the mandate that God gives to human beings, is to establish and maintain God's order in creation. The idea is that if mankind doesn't do that, then things go to chaos.
Yes.
And I think that's a compelling picture. It's like the idea of a garden. If you have a garden, you need to do two things. Like, you have to be diligent with a garden, otherwise weeds are going to grow up and it's just going to go to chaos. Yeah. So you need to do two things. You need to be diligent in removing the weeds and diligent in planting good things in the garden, because in the absence of anything else, bad things are going to grow.
And that's even more so. And again, we remember that in the story of Genesis, that God is speaking to His creation in a perfect world.
Yeah.
The fall happens after that admonition. So even because sometimes we think, oh, it's different now because we're in the fall, or even we go, oh, it's different now, we're in New Testament times, it's a different thing, or it's different now because the end is about to happen.
Yeah.
You know, why rearrange the deck chairs on a sinking ship? But the call, that first admonition from God to mankind, we still live under that today.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing is at the end of the 7 days, there's still a job for mankind to do.
Yeah.
He is to go and as I said, establish and maintain God's order, and that's our mandate. Really, is one of bringing order, and it's like holding back the forces of chaos. Like, we were put in charge to fill the earth and subdue it. So the idea there is that if we don't do our job, or if we abdicate that responsibility, and of course that's what happens in Genesis chapter 3, is that mankind, it's like the forces of chaos in a sense came in the form of the serpent, who wanted to turn everything on its head and kind of turn God's order of things on its head. That's the significance of Satan, who's a real, demonic creature, but taking the form of a serpent.
Yes.
The idea is the sort of lowest form of animals ruling over, essentially exercising influence over the highest of the creatures, which is mankind. So it sort of tips things on its head. So God's order is kind of reversed in that, and mankind should have driven him out, like we see Jesus doing constantly throughout his ministries, driving Satan out. It's basically showing what Adam and Eve should have done in the first place. And because he abdicates that responsibility, because mankind abdicates that responsibility, things go to chaos. And of course, and God answers after 6 chapters of the spread of this chaos. What does God answer with? He answers with a flood, which again is this symbol of watery chaos. Yeah. And so this idea to me is compelling, because there is an imperative in our lives to constantly be diligent lest chaos ensue. It's like we're holding back the waters of chaos, as it were. And so we apply discipline. Discipline, as I said, could be defined as doing good things because they're good things, whether or not we feel like it. But the key thing there is a certain constancy and persevering in doing those good things, doing the things we should do, because otherwise, if we neglect, as it says in that proverb, the one who is slack in his work is brother to one who destroys. It's not just if I do nothing, nothing will happen. No, if I do nothing, chaos will ensue.
Yeah.
So doing nothing and being slack and undisciplined actually causes, chaos. And you and I both know that any area of our lives where that happens, and we have this experience. So hence that has, for me, I've recognized parts of my life that I need to be more disciplined in. I've recognized that as a parent, this is an important thing, and aren't there so many proverbs about bringing discipline in the home? We'll
get into that, but the thing is, the thing that has struck me in thinking about self-discipline and thinking of being, and there's so many, like, again, sometimes we want to put the Old Testament versus the New Testament, and I've heard more and more discussion about that recently, which has just blown my mind. But we don't have to look very far into the letters of Paul, where Paul and other apostles are encouraging us, don't be weary in doing good. Go, keep going.
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
the small things. It's the small, just every day, just doing this, because not only now we know that that's the good thing to do, but that's how we show how we love Christ and obedient to Him is by in this self-discipline.
That's right,
And not only does it cause like when we abdicate the responsibility and we run away from it, not only does it cause chaos, like it's not an abstract chaos. It's not like a thought exercise. It causes chaos, number one, first and foremost, in our own life.
Yeah, in and around our lives, I may say. Yeah,
it has an effect in our life. There's consequences, and then the consequences also go out to those around us, immediately around us. And it is so bleedingly obvious when you make just a little change and go down that road, the positive effects.
Yeah.
Why don't we stay doing the positive thing? Why do we struggle so much to do the right thing?
Well, in a way, I don't find that big because that's kind of the default setting. It's just easy to do what you feel like, or not do what you don't feel like.
Yeah.
And diligence. I don't think diligence is exhausting. I think that it causes a rhythm of life that actually causes a kind of a soul restfulness when you get into that. But let me, for me, I can answer that personally because, as I said, I as we've read through Proverbs, it's had a real impact on me, and I've recognised parts of my life where weeds have been growing, and it's like, so I need to be disciplined. I'm going to pull out these weeds and plant good things in this. And it's meant being more consistent with certain things, like more consistent in putting time aside for prayer. I try to have a certain constancy in my relationship with God, not just a prayer time, yet putting aside quality time has been really important. Even just sitting still. I mean, this is something that was very important, a part of my life, just sitting still before God and being still, like practicing that discipline of mind, which I think is such an important thing. Like for me, getting back to that, and I don't separate one discipline from another. I think it's important not to be dualistic. So for me, even physical disciplines like being healthy and exercising and those sorts of things, I've been more, disciplined.
And when people talk to me about a spiritual struggle and how can they pray for me, and I can give them some spiritual answers and talk about, give them the biblical, the Bible verse answers that they want. But I say, do you want me to be really honest? You want me to really want to go to the heart? And they're like, oh, yes, brother. How can we pray for you? I say, pray for my eating. My default is to eat rubbish all day long, every day. And
I think that's mine as well.
But you somehow
it's my metabolism that's saving me.
Yes, exactly. Your metabolism is fantastic. Me, on the other hand, I've recently gotten back into the gym and working with some fantastic people. But I weighed in a few weeks ago at the heaviest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
And people want to treat that as like different to everything else, like a dualistic type of thing. Like your body is somehow removed from your spiritual walk.
Yeah, like God doesn't care about your physical health, only your spiritual health. Yeah. No, our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, Paul says in Corinthians. I think physical health is important. And in fact, it affects our states of mind.
100%. 110%.
Physical health totally affects our moods. So actually, ultimately, does end up affecting us in a moral, spiritual sense.
Big time.
Because it affects our moods. And look, discipline is discipline. Impulse control in one area will affect every area. So,
and I tell you what, I have, and again, I'm not getting, put away the bells and whistles. I'm not getting all super spiro on anybody here. But I tell you what, since
I'd like to see that.
You want to, good luck. But I've never felt more attacked by the enemy than I have in this last month, where I've decided, right, I need to get this sorted. Yeah. I'm going to be disciplined in this, and I'm going to go ahead. And it is like an amazing immediate reaction of once you stand up and say, as we've talked about in previous episodes, this idea of like, I am responsible. I own this. Yeah. Nobody else I can point a finger to. Yeah. This is me. I'm taking ownership of this. As soon as I do that, tidal wave. Tidal wave of every distraction under the sun, everything comes against you, and you're like, wow, I'm hitting a vein here where, like as in a mine, I'm hitting a vein here that is really important, and I need to get onto this. So, and I say that, and again, please do not take this in any discouragement. If you're dealing with any health issues that you can't rectify, if you're struggling with something that you can't help, you've got doctor's conditions or anything like that. We're not talking about that. Yeah. I'm talking about someone. I've got no one to blame other than myself. I can't use the excuses that I'm big boned or anything else anymore. Yeah. It's time for me to take ownership.
Yeah, I think also on the other hand, it's important to recognise that because it would be like, I guess in some ways I'm a natural, like I am in a number of areas of my life quite disciplined, and I've always been lots of regularity and very disciplined with exercise and in academic life I've been very disciplined but actually that can be in the service of the wrong thing as well. I'm going to try to articulate this as best I can, but it can just be a form of control orientation.
Yes.
So I think, and for me, being disciplined in my spiritual life almost became, at a point in my life, it was all about just being disciplined, and I have my prayer time and I read the Bible and I was good at doing things regularly, and it was about me feeling good about myself. Yeah, it was like a form of really control orientation.
To me, that is the definition. I know everyone has a different definition of this word, but for me in my life, that was the definition of religion.
Yeah.
And I had to face the fact, as a good Baptist kid who would walk around with the slogan, "It's not about religion, it's relationship," and you mock anybody that whiffs of religion. I realized very sharply when God shined his light on me that I was the most religious person I knew, because I had all of these disciplines to make me feel better.
Yeah, and I guess it was an important point to come to recognize, actually, I really need to be surrendered, and I really sought a greater depth of relationship, but on the other side of that, because what happened to me is that I thought, it's just all about discipline and it's a bit religious, and I went through a very important time of my life where it really did, my relationship with God really did significantly deepen, and my relationship with God began to really pervade my days. But I've discovered recently that, it's almost like I pendulum swang away from discipline. It's I don't need to have time. Yep. It's all the time, and actually, no, I've realised, no, I really do need to be disciplined. And so it's like discipline on the other side of relationship and surrender. And in every relationship we need to be disciplined. I need to be disciplined in my marriage, in engaging, communicating, in doing my part in the partnership of running a household. In all of those things that make for a good marriage require discipline, and it's the same in my relationship with God. I mean, that requires discipline. I mean, the other area here for me, I've realised is, with my kids too. I feel like that chaos and order kind of principle. I think I recognised a number of places of chaos in our household, and you mentioned before the principle of responsibility. I mean, a big part of discipline is saying, I need to take responsibility for this.
Huge.
This is my responsibility.
Huge.
And I've realised that there are some things there that I need to take responsibility for the elements of chaos that are ensuing. That actually, no, this is my responsibility. And even though, and I'm going to put firmer boundaries down. And it's like, you do this, and we have done this, but you get slack. This is the idea of one who is slack in his work is brother to one who is destroyed. Like there's a proverb actually that says that it says that if he who fails or to discipline their children actually acts hatefully towards them. And I found that proverb really compelling too. It's like it says about God that He disciplines those He loves, and because I love my kids, I need to bring an element of discipline, however much they kick against that. Yeah. And I've tried to tighten up those boundaries, and they've kicked against it, but. I feel that from reading the Proverbs, it has bolstered my determination. I mean, this is why we read the Word. We go through this as long as we've been doing this podcast. Yeah. We've been sharing. It's not just an intellectual thing. I mean, you and I have shared our journey and what impact this is having on us. Yeah. This is called growth, And growth looks like you being challenged by God through His Word constantly,
and failing,
and recognizing those areas of failing,
constantly failing. Well, listen, Matt, you've brought up the next part of what I want to talk about this week, and this is discipline when it comes to children. Yeah. So let's take a break, and this is where it's going to get really sticky here. Let's take a break for a moment. We'll be back in a moment with Thrive Deeper with more talk about discipline. Thrive Deeper, episode 46, and you're back with DJ Payne and Matt Jacoby. We are talking about discipline. Matt, we've been talking about self-discipline, and we could go on for episodes and episodes about the different ramifications about that. But we've had a couple of questions come in, specifically about the last couple of chapters of Proverbs we've been talking about. And I'll give you the verses that have really, people have got some questions about. We're in Proverbs 23, and it says, let's pick it up in verse 13. Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you strike him with a rod, he will not die. If you strike him with the rod, you will save his soul from Sheol. My son, if your heart is wise, my heart too will be glad. My inmost being will exult when your lips speak what is right. And he goes on and on there. And that is just one example of many that are in Proverbs about disciplining children.
Yeah.
Now,
well, listen to this one. Proverbs 13:24. This is the one I was alluding to before the break. Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. How's that one?
Bring it on.
I think probably the disturbing thing there is the rod. Is the question about?
Well, I think that's what.
Because that's a little countercultural.
It depends what culture you're from.
Well, I suppose in a culture where domestic abuse and violence is an issue.
Yes.
This is perhaps grates against. And I think this is one of the problems. Actually, is good things when abused always take away from good things.
Yes.
It's like there's a lot of elements of life that, because of abuses thereof, seem to have this negative connotation. Now, of course, you could put whatever rod,
wooden spoon, strap, a belt,
or even just people do time out or consequences like you miss out on this or that. I mean, these are all different forms of discipline, but physical discipline is a little controversial today, isn't it? And yet,
it definitely is. It definitely is, and I find it funny that in my experience, and again, I need to set some boundaries around this. I'm a male. Yeah. Right. I was raised by a good old country girl who, when her firstborn son, me, was out of line, the wooden spoon came out, and I've had many wooden spoons broken over me as a child. Yeah. Right. When I became an adult, and especially when I got to know people who weren't disciplined as I was, like my younger brother, who's 5 years younger than me, he was the spoiled child, didn't get a smack ever. I've turned around to my mother and father and said, "Bless you." Yeah. Thank you. Every time you hit me and you went and you felt bad and you cried about it where I didn't see, and every time you hit me and you thought, I've done the wrong thing, maybe I want to say thank you, because there was 1,000 other times you should have hit me and you didn't, and I got away with something, and I want to thank you for every smack you ever gave me. Bless you, because you taught me black and white what was right or wrong in a way that, and again, this is for me personally, as a boy child, the other things didn't work. Yeah. And again, here's my other bias.
That's really interesting.
I've raised three boys. Yeah. I've got three boys. Yeah. Each one is different. Each one different discipline. They are very different, And my experience, the funny thing about my experience, and praise God, I think number one, if you're talking about disciplined children, you need to have a partnership with your wife or husband where you're both on the same team. Yeah. There's nothing worse than if you're working in and saying, we will never discipline our children. Your partner's like, what are you talking about? I've just bought this beautiful wooden spoon. Can't wait to use it. That's wrong.
Well, you turn into good cop, bad cop.
Exactly.
And that's the last thing
exactly. And praise God for my wonderful wife, Benita. We've always been on the same page right from the very beginning. And we've never had to experience that good cop, bad cop thing. But for me, I got some advice very early on when I already had my own thoughts about how I was going to discipline my children. And again, my oldest is 15 now, same as your oldest. Both of our oldest are the same. I got some advice very early on from a dad, a very, very classic, I would say a very wise dad. He said, you got a choice, especially with boys. I said, oh, okay, yep. He goes, because this guy had 5 kids, boys and girls. You got a choice. You either be their friend now, you're going to be their best buddy today, or you're going to be their best buddy when they're adults. You pick. And I was like, what do you mean?
Wow. Yeah.
And he said, you're going to be their best friend now, and you never smack them, you treat them, and you're the best buddy, and they can't wait to spend time with you. Yeah. He goes, my experience when you do that when you're older, they don't want anything to do with you. They treat you like a fool. He said, or you're the cop now, and you're the discipline machine, and they're not going to be your best friend now. They're not going to really enjoy you sometimes as a dad, but when they get older, they will respect you, they will love you, they will want to spend time with you. And that just weighed in so heavily in my heart.
And yet, this is an interesting thing because we know... we know each other well and we know each other's families. And I feel like this is something where you have showed a lot of consistency. This is an area where this is my area of slackness. And I think I've tended to be too soft on my kids. And I like it's been like I. And look, I have a great relationship with my kids, and it's not like there's no discipline. They're quite highly strung kids as well, so we have to work with that.
Yeah.
But I would say I've been on the soft side, and I think
and I would say I've been on the hard side.
Yeah, well, but like I see the relationship with you that you have with your boys, and it's just beautiful. I mean, the way that you enjoy time together and do things together. It's just, it's beautiful. And I mean, I try to do the same. But my point is that discipline hasn't destroyed that.
No.
With your. No. Actually, there's a wonderful respect, but you are dad. You're not pandering to them,
No.
and I think there's a neediness that can come from parents where I want my children to love me. I want them to love me, and I don't want to upset them.
Yes.
Otherwise, I feel bad. Well, actually, here is where the responsibility bit comes in, and the order and chaos thing comes a bit. Actually, the forces of chaos are there in their lives.
They are machines of chaos.
We need to teach. We need to impose discipline on our children to actually teach them to live disciplined lives. It's like get them into a pattern. As they grow up, and they will live more healthily patterned lives. So I mean, for me, when we have done this and we've done it consistently, it's led to actually our children being happier.
110%.
And yet, when we've slackened off, things actually get worse. So it's actually
the chaos creeps in around
the immediate.
Corners. Yes,
they get what they want, and yet in the long term, it doesn't lead to a peaceful household and doesn't lead to a happy household. So I feel like I've learned some things the hard way here, but I mean our kids are still at an age where we can where our ups and downs of this, where I feel like we're getting better at this. I think it's worth to come back to the Proverbs and some principles here, because again, I want to get back to I guess forms of discipline, and perhaps the controversial element here, which is the idea of the rod, like physical discipline. I think the underlying principle here when it comes to discipline in the Proverbs is that it's always connected to love. You notice in the whoever is this idea, if you love your children, you'll discipline them. And the idea actually is that discipline must be an act of love. Yeah. If it's not an act of love, then it's not really right. Yeah. And we know that discipline, both you and I know that at times discipline can be an act of anger. Yeah. Yeah. And that actually isn't even received. Well, that actually doesn't make. I've noticed that like I can snap and yell at one of the kids or whatever, and it just doesn't. That doesn't do anyone any favors. Yeah, that doesn't do anyone any favors. Yeah. So discipline. The one who disciplines needs to be disciplined. Yes. This is what I've learned. I mean, I'm sharing all these lessons that I've learned the hard way, but I feel that I am learning, and actually, again, it's reading the Proverbs that has brought this to the surface for me. That actually, as a parent disciplining, I need to be disciplined because there's so much in the Proverbs also about acting in anger. Yeah. And being losing your temper, and this is where again. So you got to put these things together, don't you? 100%. Like if we're going to talk discipline, make sure you don't separate it from all the stuff in the Proverbs about uncontrolled anger. Yeah, yeah. Like the Proverbs gives us the context and conflict as well, and also that's a good point. Yeah, actually, because the rule of conflict is about listening and communicating well. So 100%. There are times where we need to listen to our children, where we need to give, help them feel hurt. But if they're wrong, if they're wrong, they're wrong. And this is the other thing about, and also the idea with conflict, and Proverbs speaks a lot about this, is the partnership between a husband and a wife. Yeah. And again, my heart goes out and our prayers go out to anybody who's listening who doesn't have a partner in their life. Absolutely, in raising kids. Yeah.
But for those of us blessed with a partner, this is where a partnership comes in handy, and to have these conversations and be disciplined about what you're going to do with discipline for your children before they even show up.
Yeah.
And this is a big conversation we had together as a husband and wife.
So you mean like drawing the boundaries beforehand, not just inventing them on the...
100%. I sat down with Benita and we said, right, what do we feel about this?
Yeah.
And she was a bit surprised that I was so black and white about some things. I'll give you some examples. I said, I will never hit any of our children with my hands.
Yeah.
I know some people believe you've got to smack with your hands and there's all different philosophies about this, but my personal philosophy, and I'm not saying it's the right way to go, this is what has worked for us. I will only use a rod or a wooden spoon or something like that because I don't want them to be scared of my hands, type of thing. And that was something that was instilled in me with my mother. That's my own thought there. But the other thing was, and the big thing for both of us, we will never respond in anger.
Yeah.
At the very most it'll be like, right, I am angry, and we can admit that. You will go into your room or go over there and let me cool down and let me calm down. Let me pray. Let me get to a place where I can come in there, and out of love, I need to respond out of love with all of these things and really try to show them, because I believe that part of our relationship with God is about discipline. That he disciplines us. He shows us and guides us. And we get, I believe this is all connected.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I want to show them the right way that our God deals with us. He doesn't strike us down in anger. Yeah. He takes his time and he wants to listen and love us type of thing. So it's harder. It's so hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think as our kids have got older, we've, there are times where we'll say, to our youngest, do I need to get the wooden spoon? Because it's like a last resort. It's like, and I suppose now we're saying, you've got to the point now where we shouldn't have to discipline you like this. Exactly. This is baby. This is kiddie sort of
elementary stuff. This is elementary.
So we were the same, the wooden spoons, and the children would hide the wooden spoons and all those sorts of things. What would you say to someone who was just adamant you should never ever strike?
Look, and I have dear friends and family who believe that wholeheartedly, and largely part of that is from their upbringing. Because they were struck in anger. They were struck, right? And so there's a principle that they are fearful about that. And that's, look, the great thing about Christianity, the great thing about the Bible is that it works for all cultures. Yeah. It works for all people. Yeah. And it doesn't say, hey, here's a complete instruction. Yes, it doesn't give you a...
So it has to, are you saying like you tailor it to whatever perhaps the situation or the individuality of the children?
Both. I first and foremost, I strongly believe when it comes into disciplining your children, it's to do with the relationship between mum and dad.
Yeah.
That's foundational.
Yeah.
That's foundational. I think that our biggest role as mum and dad is to be living a pattern of both, gender, roles, all that type of stuff for our children. But bigger than that, a pattern of our relationship with God, and then we're like, in a lot of times, we are God to our children. Yeah. We're giving them a taste of that. And I think that all of this discipline action comes out of that relationship first. Yeah. And you have to be on the same page for what you want to do with your children. Yeah. And I think you can make it work if you're consistent. For example, if two adults agree that we're only going to do this, and again, I'm playing a gender role here, I think boys are different from girls. Yeah. I know not always, and there's exceptions to prove the rule, but a lot of time boys are just little cavemen whose brains are only wired to their back seat, type of thing. And so I think for little boys, and I think if we get in there early and we be consistent early, I really think we should, the concept of smacking a child when they're 8 or 9 or anything that should be just crazy, because they should have learnt when they're young.
By that point,
mum and dad mean what they say when they say, we're going to, type of thing. Yeah. So
I remember early on with our kids, one of the things that we didn't want to do is change our whole house around so that everything was out of reach. Yes. We thought, no, the child's not going to pull the CDs back in the day when you had CDs. We're going to leave that there, and we're not going to put up plastic, perspex things in. And instead, if when our daughter would reach to pull that out, we would give her a little smack on the hand, and she would cry and complain, and she'd do it again, and then we'd give her another smack on the hand, and after a while. Yeah. She gave in, and that's what So
she realised,
and the CDs stayed there, and there were certainly times where we would come back and they'd be on the floor. But in most cases, that setting those boundaries was an important part actually of us living together in our household. I mean, to me, it's also a matter of understanding that actually as parents, we're in charge. Responsibility means we're in charge, and they need to know that we're in charge.
Yeah.
And of course, all of this, because you mentioned before that there are so many situations where discipline has been done in anger, almost malice. I mean,
abuse.
Discipline only works in an atmosphere of love and affirmation. Yes. Otherwise, it just crushes the spirit of our kids. And I think it's really important that discipline isn't meted out in a way that kind of crushes their spirit. We need to make sure that we're listening to our children, not just shutting them down. We do need to respect them.
Yes.
And so I'll always give my kids a chance to explain themselves.
100%.
And I mean, often what happens is that they'll say, "You're not listening. You're not listening. No, it's not. I just disagree with you. It's not that I'm not listening. No, I've heard you, and I disagree.
I've heard that tall tale.
And I disagree that you didn't mean to. You didn't just drop that stick on your sister's head. You hit her.
We have video evidence of this. Yeah. And look, it's 100% right. And the hard thing, I think, for a lot of parents is, especially with the trend of people getting married older and having kids older, and these kids have been longed for so long, and especially for any family who's had trouble conceiving children, when those kids finally come here, the thought that you've got a little infant sinner in your hands whose heart is towards sin and chaos is just like foreign, and you're like, no, this is an angel come down from heaven, and it's going to be perfect. And it's like, no, you need to get on top of this straight away.
Well, it's that principle, isn't it? That if you don't do due diligence, chaos ensues. And
we're right back to the beginning. We're right back to the beginning.
Right back to the beginning, which I think is important in our households, and it's a great discussion because I recognise I come back to this principle of responsibility, and as a parent, I am responsible for my kids, and they're not just my they're not just my mate. Yes. They're my kids, and I have a parental responsibility. But I'm so discipline is needed there. But at the same time, I need to be disciplined to be able to be a good parent and someone that disciplines well, that puts boundaries. All of that takes discipline. It means that I need to be disciplined actually, because if I'm in a state of in myself, due to being undisciplined, if I'm in a bad state myself, if I'm not disciplined with my temperament and all of those sorts of things, then I'm just not the good parent that I need my kids to be. Yeah. So this topic of discipline is such a pervasive and big topic.
It's a huge one. Here's the, where we go from sort of giving principles to sort of meddling here. But I tell you, this has been the most convicting thing for me recently. And it's largely to do with a few different things I've read in scripture and different people and some preaching from yourself, Matt, sitting underneath your preaching. When I walk into my household, or even before I get to my household, and if there's ever a shred in me that feels like, oh, here we go. Like if there's any part of me, one cell within me that goes, I'm not happy to be here. Yeah. I've had to realise, instead of running away or retreating into the cave or getting busy, I have to go, this is my fault. I have set the tone. I'm responsibility. And as soon as I take that responsibility, that mantle, that ownership, and say, God, I need your help here, I'm going to make this right.
Beautiful.
It boom, that changes now.
Yeah.
So that's a principle, not saying that I walk into the house then and start smacking everybody with
and
a
it's
rod.
not like also that you can control everything,
No.
but it's that principle of you've got to take responsibility for what you are responsible for.
Yeah.
I reckon that. I mean, and I've had exactly the same kind of revelation. And it really was a revelation at points where relationships with my kids started to wind a bit out of control, and I thought, hang on a minute, I need to take responsibility. I'm being too negative. I'm being reactionary rather than I'm not affirming enough. I actually took responsibility for that and completely changed my approach and was more disciplined about being affirming, spending more quality time with my kids. The difference that made was it really made an enormous difference actually. And, it was the application of discipline first to me. And this gets us back to the beginning, because discipline, before we try to change the world around us, how about we change the world within us? And that's essentially where discipline begins.
Well, I think that's one of the most personal conversations that Matt and I have had on record when it comes to both self-discipline and disciplining in the family. Oof. I hope there was some meat in there for you to take away. Now, if you've got any thoughts, you've got objections, ideas, other ways of viewing it, please, we would love to hear from you. But before I tell you how to get in contact with us, I wanted to let you know that I've heard everybody's responses about the little bonus pieces. If you don't listen all the way to the end of the podcast, sometimes Matt and I put a little bonus thing at the very end after the chat, after Benita comes in, the voiceover lady, and tells you where to find us. Sometimes we slip a little bit of extra in there, and sometimes a little bit personal, sometimes a little bit funny. Well, we've got one for you today, a bit of a movie review and how it fits into the topic we've been talking about. It doesn't really fit into the main goal of the podcast, so we put it on the end sometime because we think it's you'll enjoy it. But if you don't enjoy it, you know what? You can just fast forward. Anyway, you can get in contact with us anytime at thrivetoday.net.au. You can subscribe to the Thrive Daily Reading Guide there, both an online version, a digital version, or even the physical copy. You can find our feeds to subscribe to this podcast and how to get in contact with us, our social media on Facebook, and how to easily send us a message, just like Anna did today in the comment that you heard. Please feel free to get in touch with us anytime. We love to hear from you. Well, until next week, this has been DJ for Matt Jacoby, for Stuart and the whole team behind this. Thank you so much for listening to Thrive Deeper.
Thank you so much for listening to Thrive Deeper. We value all our listening community. If you are on Facebook, search and like Thrive Today page to get all of our latest updates. Our home on the internet is at thrivetoday.net.au. There you can subscribe to the Thrive Daily Reading Guide and contact us directly. That's at thrivetoday.net.au. Our music is provided by the talented Rod Gear. For more information, head to rodgearmusic.com. Join the conversation online with over 400 other listeners at facebook.com/groups/thrivedeeper. The podcast is recorded at the studios of Geelong Christian Media Incorporated, then edited and produced by DJP.FM. Until next time, thrive.
While we've been recording all these conversations about children and parents, Matt's phone has been ringing off the hook with your kids ringing in.
I know, yeah, it's like...
It's perfect,
yeah.
It's perfect. It's absolutely, like it's a real life demonstration.
Yeah. Yes. I'm doing a podcast. No, it's okay. Anyway.
It's it's been hilarious. Now listen, one really corny thing that I didn't want to include in the main thing, and I wanted to put it here as a little bonus. This is a little DJ bonus bit at the end. I went and saw Shazam last night, the movie Shazam.
Yeah, I was thinking actually of taking my kids to see it later on.
Look, and again, superhero films. I know people are in and out in DC, Marvel, and all that type of stuff. And I know people have different strong convictions about different
you and
films.
Your pagan films,
Exactly,
DJ.
exactly. Well, this Shazam is right up there with them. But I have to say, I loved this movie. It hit me, and it might be my age, it might be where I am, and I think it's even partly of reading through the Proverbs at the moment. The whole point of this Shazam film, and it's not for everybody, it's not for little kids. There are some scary moments in the bad guys in this film are bad guys.
Right.
And it's a very spiritual film in one
Is it
sense.
like PG or M? Or
I think it might be PG, but I wouldn't take it's like an 80s PG where it's when there's scary moments, there's scary moments. And if there's kids doing, things that kids do in a bad way, they're really going to do it. A funny moment that I found in it is the idea of Shazam is these two 14-year-old kids, one of them becomes Shazam, if you've ever seen anything in the comic.
I've read the blurb.
And so Shazam is a young kid, Billy Batson. He gets the magic stuff from the wizard, and every time he says Shazam, he turns into the world's greatest champion with the strength of Hercules and the mightiness of Zeus and all this type of stuff, and a great superhero. So imagine 14-year-old in an adult's body. Yeah. The two of them, they accidentally come across some money, and the first thing they go is, "What are we going to do?" And they go to a 7-Eleven to buy liquor, of course. And I could see the mums in the audience going, "Hang on, what are they doing?" Like because they're there with the little kids, and the little kids are loving it, and it's hilarious. And they really buy booze and they really open it up and they take a big swig and you're like, what are they teaching here? But the funny thing is they hate the taste of alcohol, so they go back and buy lollies and everything. Look, I'm not getting into, and again, I'm saying this because everyone's got different thoughts about films. But I tell you, the overwhelming message of this film is to take responsibility for what you've been given and to act accordingly. And not only that, it's hard. It's hard to make the right decision.
So the idea is that he gets these powers and he has to learn resposbility.
Oh, the whole film, he spends the whole film running away from from the power that he's been given, and how it hurts everybody around him. It's an amazing message. Yeah. And when he finally takes responsibility, not only does he help himself, even if he thinks it's no reward for himself, he ends up helping and really helping in a tangible way those around him.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get over how strong a message that was in this film that is really applicable for, talking about in a family or anything like that. It might be because I've got a mind full of Proverbs at the moment. I don't know.
Sounds great. Maybe I will go on. I was just going to drop the kids off, but maybe I noticed you didn't invite me. You've given up on me, have you, with superhero films?
For superhero films, I don't invite you anymore, Matt. There's not enough, death and violence and despair at the end of the film.
That's not death and violence, but my films do have a lot of despair. Anyway.
There you go.
I'll go and take a look.
All right, you'll have to let us know what you think. There you go. There's a little bonus movie review here on the
that
Thrive
was worth
Deeper.
your money.
Perfect. Before you head off, let's do one little bit here.
Hang on, just let me. I seriously. Hi, doll.
You need to get chocolate right now.
Okay, listen. Are you cooking? Are you? And Nana's there. On my way back, I'm finishing up now. On my way back, I'll get some chocolate, okay?
150 grams.
150 grams of chocolate for your cooking. Yep, 150 grams. And what you say is, Dad, can you please get some chocolate?
Dad, can you please get some chocolate?
Okay, my love, I'll get you some chocolate on the way home. All right? I'll be home in about, I think,
And it's dark too.
dark chocolate. Okay, all right. I'll get it on my way back, okay? See you soon. Love you. Bye.
Oh, that is perfect. All right. What we're going to do here is people are loving when I put a little bit at the end of the podcast about us talking further. People love topic of discipline. Oh, multifaceted. a multifaceted topic this morning. A multifaceted subject for us to go down, and I think you're going to enjoy it. But we start